This conference will now be recorded.
Yes. So Gamzu Latova is a beautiful expression, which means Gam also Zu, this Latova is for the good. In other words, it's acknowledging that God runs the world and doesn't always run it in the way that we think He should run it, but we trust that He's got a better grip on things than we do. So actually, there was a person in the Talmud known as Nachum Ish Gamzu. Nachum, the man of Gamzu, also this, because he would always say Gamzu Latova. Now it's interesting because he was a rabbi, yet his title is not Rav Nachum, Rabbi Nachum. His title is Nachum Ish Gamzu, which means that Ish Gamzu is a greater accolade than rabbi, right? And it's an important way to try to lead our lives. It leads to a much happier life when we recognize that we're in good hands and that things are not happening in a random, haphazard way, but God is in control. You know, when different children of mine were applying to different schools and graduate programs, you know, I would say to them, listen, you've done your best and apply. And now you know that, you know, if we have to make the decision, then maybe we'll make a good one, maybe we'll make a bad one. When the decision is made for us, so then we know that we are in good hands, that we're being led properly, and that's how we go. I've shared before that my brother Lav Shalom told me about there was a radio call-in show when he was living in Baltimore, and the question put out to the listeners was, if you were God, what would you change? If you were God, what would you do? And there were the typical answers: no more hunger, no more illness, no more war. And then finally someone called in and said, if I were God, then obviously I would do exactly what God is doing. And I wouldn't change anything at all, right? Because He knows what He knows. If I were Him, I would know what He knows, and therefore I would do what He's doing. And that is a very, very powerful approach. So yes, Gam Zu Latova. The Vilna Gaon famously says, the things that we laugh about today, we cry about tomorrow. Things that we cry about today, we laugh about it tomorrow. So fasten your seatbelts and get onto that ride of life and see where it takes you. And we do our best at each juncture and recognize that we are in good hands. Okay. With that, I just want to go briefly again. We started that this Sunday, right? Next Tuesday, I am not here. The Tuesday afterwards, we will have class. Now, you're going to see the emails. Do you guys get the emails about classes and stuff like that? Mm-hmm. Okay, so if you don't, you could send me email me your email address. That's the easiest way, and that way I can just make sure you get onto the list. You're going to see that next week there'll be no classes, and the week after there'll be no classes. That's what the email is going to say, but I will have this class, meaning I'm coming back, not only going away for a week, we're coming back for a day. We will be around on Tuesday, and then we're taking our granddaughter to her great-grandparents in Florida for a nice extended weekend. So I will be back for a day. I'm not going to be giving other classes. I'm going to be in and out, but it's important for you to have this class. You guys are important, and these are busy times with a lot going on. So even though the email will say no classes next week, no class. The week after, the email will say no classes, but this class will be on. If I'm going to write that I'm having this class Tuesday night, well, why aren't you having the class Tuesday? So just
Rabbi,
yeah.
What about the 29th? You said
We'll have to see. I have to see what time I'm getting back on the 28th.
So
Correct. As of now, the 15th, I will not be here for sure. 22nd, I will be. 29th, I'm getting back Tuesday sometime. Let me see what time I'm getting back, and we'll take it from there.
Okay.
All right? Okay. So once again, this Sunday is a fast day. What is the name of the fast day? 17th of Tammuz. What happened on that 17th day of Tammuz?
Moses brought the Ten Commandments and then saw there's a golden calf and then he destroyed it.
And he shattered those tablets. Good. And more recently, what happened on that day? Because most of our fast days, besides, of course, Yom Kippur, which is a Torah fast day, and besides Tanis Esther, all of our fast days revolve around
Israel.
Yes, and more specifically, well, yes, Jerusalem. Yerushalayim. Okay?
Jerusalem and Israel not the same thing?
I'm sorry?
Jerusalem and Israel.
Israel is the land of Israel. Jerusalem is the city in Israel,
Okay.
right? There is a city, Jerusalem. There are many cities in Israel: Tel Aviv, Ashkelon, Ashdod, Eilat, Safat, Tiberia. Many cities in Israel. Jerusalem is the holy city. That is where the temple stood, both the first temple and the second temple. And on this day is when there was the breach of the walls around Jerusalem, which led to the destruction of the temple about 3 years. I'm sorry, I'm getting confused. Right? 3 weeks later was the destruction of the temple. I'm getting confused. On the 10th of Tevet, which is a fast around January time, that is when the siege began. And then it was, I believe, 2.5 years later that the destruction took place. Yeah. Okay, so 3 weeks later was the destruction of the temple. Okay, so that is a fast day. What is the purpose of a fast day?
To elevate holiness and our humbleness.
Yeah, so it's not simply not eating, right? The not eating is a means towards an end of trying to be a little bit more focused on the spiritual, not on the physical. And and that's what makes the difference. So this was the start of the Churban of the Beit HaMikdash. And we mentioned last week that there are different levels of mourning that begin with the 3 weeks. And then once we hit the 9 days, that's the first of the month of Av, and then 9 days. And then we have Erev Tisha B'Av, which has added mourning. And then we have Tisha B'Av, the 9th of Av itself, which is a very, very strict, severe mourning. It's the only one that, like Yom Kippur, that it starts the night before, and we're not wearing leather shoes, right? And abstaining from washing. That's only on Tisha B'Av and Yom Kippur. On these other more minor fasts, it starts in the morning about 4 something, right? On the calendar lists the time, right? And also the email that goes out. So if you're not getting the email, please send me an email with your emails. I'll make sure that you guys are added to the email lists that go, the emails that go out. Okay, so it's a day fast. You're, of course, no eating or drinking, but leather shoes are not an issue, and washing is not an issue, and even brushing your teeth is not an issue if you are uncomfortable without your teeth being brushed, or if those around you might be uncomfortable without your teeth being brushed, right? So brushing teeth is okay, but you just need to be sure not to swallow anything. You rinse out and you spit out, but make sure not to swallow anything that is allowed. During these 3 weeks, so we don't have engagements or weddings, we don't have dancing and musical instruments. Men, right, unless they need to for work, don't get haircuts and don't shave, right? That's for men. Women would not get a haircut, but shaving legs, anything like that is not an issue. Yeah.
What about not eating meat?
That's 9 days.
Okay.
That's during the 9 days. Not eating eating meat or drinking wine. That's during the 9 days besides Shabbat. Okay.
That's inside the 3 weeks?
No, that's not the 3 weeks. That is the 9 days. Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, I'm sorry. I misunderstood what you were saying. Yes, the 9 days are within the 3 weeks. In
Wow.
other words, the 3 weeks are going to begin on Sunday, which is July
13.
July 13th, okay? And then the 26th, right? So it's a little less than 2 weeks later is Rosh Chodesh Av, the start of the month of Av. That's going to be on Shabbos. So the usual 9-day restrictions will only begin on that Sunday, go through that week. Then we have Shabbos, and then we have Sunday is Tisha B'Av. Yes. So Ryan, I misunderstood what you were saying. Yes, that was a valid, important point you're making. It's not 3 weeks plus 9 days. It's not going to be 21 plus 9. It's 21 and actually 22 Sunday through Sunday. But the last 9 days are the 9 days.
Mm.
Okay.
Excuse me.
Yes.
So, are there more than one day for fasting in those 3 weeks?
Yes, the first day, which is this Sunday, July 13th, and then August 3rd, that is a very heavy duty fast day. There we actually read the Megillah of Eicha. The way we work it here in Shul is on Shabbos day, there will not be Sudash Lishit because you have to stop eating before sunset. And we first finished Avi Mincha. So we're going to daven mincha early in the day, really after the kiddush, and then go home, and then we will reconvene from Mariv once Shabbos ends. Shabbos ends about probably. Let me get the calendar, make it right easier. Give me 1 second.
They asked me like, so when did you marry? I said 2008. It's been 15 years. How come you decided to convert now? I'm like, I just woke up. But I'm like, well, it just happened, you know. So embarrassing.
Okay, the handy dandy Beth Jacob calendar. Okay, July 13th, the fast begins 4:22. The fast ends 8:46. On the Shabbos of August 2nd, Erev Tisha B'Av, so the fast begins at 7:50 p.m. Shabbos ends 8:31. Why does the fast begin at 7:50 and Shabbos ending about 41, 42 minutes afterwards? Right? Why do we have that discrepancy? Or why do we have that we light candles and Shabbos begins, let's say let's say this week, right? We make Shabbos early over here, but this week Shabbos begins at 7:26 and Shabbos ends at 8:24. Right? Isn't a day 24 hours? Why do Jews have a 25-hour day? That's so strange.
So just like a buffer, like the just in case buffer?
Well, yes, but it's more exact than that. Lily? Yes, but it's more exact than that. That's for Shabbos to end. Before sunset. Okay. So we have that period between sunset and nightfall. Sunset is sunset. Nightfall is 3 stars, medium-sized stars, visible. That is called this Bein Hashmashot, between the periods, right? Dusk period. Okay? So is that day or is that night? It's sort of in between. So on Friday, it might be night. It might be Shabbos already. So we have to stop doing anything before sunset. And to play it safe, we typically, the candle lighting time is 18 minutes before that, right? But if you miss candle lighting time, as long as you are before sunset, you should go ahead and light candles. So that time period is a swing period. On Friday, it might be night. So we have to stop doing any non-Shabbat activities before that. On Saturday, right, it might be day. So we can't end Shabbat until after that period. And that's why typically we have an hour, an extra hour between candle lighting, right? For example, candle lighting is 6, then Shabbat will end at 7, roughly, right? Use the calendar to know exactly. Why is that? Because actual nightfall is 42 minutes after sunset. And candle lighting is scheduled for 18 minutes before sunset. 18 plus 42 is 60. That is our 1 hour. So that's an easy way to know. Okay? So therefore, we'll have to stop eating on August 2nd, Shabbat. We'll have to stop eating at 7:50. Why? Because that's the time that what happens? Sunsets, right? But it's not going to end until 8:30 on Sunday night. That's about 40 minutes after the sunset. That's when the stars come out. That's when Shabbat would end. Of course, it's not Shabbat, it's Sunday, but that's why we have these 24 plus hour days when there is an issue of not doing malacha. Okay.
Are you allowed to take your medications when you're fasting? Or
Okay. So if it's medication, certainly on these more minor fasts, right? Medication that needs to be taken should be taken. A person is on antibiotics, you take the antibiotics, right? You would try to take it dry if you can, without any liquid, right? If you can, so then you would use a minimal amount of medication. A person's taking heart medication, blood pressure, anything like that you need to take. If you're taking vitamins, so take them at night. Take them the day before, and then on Sunday of Shabbos Tammuz, 17th Tammuz, or the Sunday of Tisha B'av, you take it after the fast. Right? Vitamins are not anything that's going to be a major issue. Okay? Yes, Lee.
Rabbi, so on Sunday, what is this? Is it a holiday that's coming up?
So Sunday, July 13th, is not a holiday. It's a regular, right? None of these fast days are holidays in terms of not driving, in terms of no electricity, no lights, things like that, no cooking. None of these days have that din.
What is this 3-week period called?
It's called the 3 weeks. That's easy to remember, right? It's known as the 3 weeks. And on the calendar, I say here, 3 weeks begin, right? Fast of 17 Tammuz, 3 weeks begin, okay? So what's relevant for us is in terms of the haircuts and just to know, not live music, dancing, music, right? Right? Yeah, that's what we need to know during this time period.
Just this I've heard before so not the full 3 weeks, but those last 9 days, because it's becoming more.
And those last 9 days are called
9 days.
the 9 days.
I've heard that and this would be more for the women, but to also start refraining from wearing makeup. Is that true, or is that a stringency?
I don't think so. I don't think so.
What will happen if you just fast for 3 weeks?
Oh, you'll probably die.
No. I mean, you're gonna fast in the morning and then break your fast at night, and then fast in the morning, break your fast at night.
There's no reason to do that.
Oh, okay.
There's no reason to do that, right? The first day is a fast day, meaning July 13th is a fast day, and August 3rd is a fast day, right? Anything more than that, there's no reason to do it. Okay. Work a regular work on Tisha B'av itself. One would abstain ideally from going to work. However, it's a Sunday, so it's less of an issue for most people. Right? A person does work on that Sunday, so then ideally you want to wait till after Chatzot, after midday. Judaism is so confusing. Midday is about 1:30 p.m. Why is midday 1:30 p.m.?
But for the music, you can listen to the a cappella songs, right?
Yes. A cappella which is just vocals, even though some of those a cappella have got, the boom button. And I'm not gonna embarrass myself trying to do it, right? But yeah.
Have you
So
heard a
that
thank
is
you?
fine. But one
Have you heard a
second.
thank?
Wait,
Oh, sorry.
one second. Judaism is so crazy. Why is midday 1:30 p.m.?
That's odd. I don't know.
Why not? You can just.
Saturday Night Live has a great skit about the founding of America. And let's make things difficult. We'll measure using inches. How many inches to a foot? 12. Right? How many ounces to a pound? 16. Unless it's a fluid ounce to a quart. 32. It was like, like the metric system just makes sense. Everything is just base 10, right? So, but Judaism is not trying to make things difficult. There is a just like Shabbos, right? There's a very clear reason. What is midday, guys? Midday is not arbitrarily 12 o'clock on the clock. What should midday be? The middle of either sunrise and sunset or dawn and night, right? Those are right. It should be the midpoint. Well, that's exactly what chatzot is. Chatzot comes from the word chatzi. What's chatzi? Half. Chatzot is the midpoint. So yes, there's noontime, but if you want to know what is the halachic when it pertains to halachot, you have to know what is actually the midpoint between sunrise. Let's go simple, between sunrise and sunset, right? In the winter, we have about 10 hours of sunlight. In the summer, we have about 14 hours of sunlight, which means then that a halachic hour is not 60 minutes. A halachic hour is 1/12 of the daytime period. So if you have to, let's say the Shema within the first 3 hours of the day, it's not 9 a.m., it's 3/12 of the day from sunrise, right? Sometimes a halachic hour, if you have 10 hours of daytime, 10 hours is 600 minutes, divided by 12 is 50. So every 1/12, you have 50-minute hours. If you have a 14-hour day, then that's going to be 740. 740. 800, 16, 14 times 6, 840 minutes, right? Divided by 12 is going to be 70. So you'll have 70-minute hours, okay? So we're not just trying to make things confusing, but so going back to what we said before, Gabriella, so if one needs to work on Tisha B'Av, then one should try to do it after Chatzot, after midday, which is from 1:30 on, okay? But it is a full fast day, so one wants to be careful with, that what the work that one does is not exertive. That's going to make the fasting very difficult. Okay, good. So we have that, and I don't know of this idea of not wearing makeup or anything like that. Yeah, we don't bathe during the 9 days unless you're doing it to wash off, sweat or something like that. Yeah, I don't think so. Is that what you were taught along the way? Perhaps.
But it's very, yeah, a lot of more strict standards in some things.
Yeah, I don't think that's halacha. In other words, maybe some people have that as a minhag, right? But in general, we have enough restrictions, right? We don't necessarily go looking for more minhagim, customs to make things more like fasting for 3 weeks. If that's the halacha, then that's what we do. If that's not the halacha, then that's not what we do. Yeah. Okay. Let's come back to Shabbos, guys. Where are we at?
Page
I think-
145? 145.
145. Okay, good. So now we're going to be starting the 39 Malachot, those 39 categories of activity. And we've discussed already before that Shabbat is always linked to the Mishkan, right? What the Mishkan is a tabernacle that was built, right, as the precursor for the temple, the Beit HaMikdash. This was portable in the Midbar, in the desert, into the land of Israel, different places until it was established in a permanent manner in Jerusalem, in Yerushalayim. That is where we go. We go to the Kotel. That's one of the outer walls of that whole temple, second temple structure. So we explained that Shabbos is our testimony. Our testimony that what?
God.
What about?
God awareness.
I'm sorry?
God awareness.
Yes, but every mitzvah is God awareness. Shabbos is our testimony that
We are chosen people.
God created.
Oh.
Right? We do our beliefs. God didn't rest on Saturday. Hate to shatter any notions. God did not rest on Saturday. He didn't get tired at all. What did he do on Saturday? He stopped creating. So we show our belief in God as a creator that we stop creating on Shabbat. We stop involving in creative activities that shape the world to our needs. Okay? God was shaping the world during the days of creation. He ceased to shape the world. We too cease to shape the world. But it's not a day of rest, as we said before. That's why turning on a light switch is not very exertive, but that we don't do on Shabbos, because that is altering, changing, shaping the world to our needs. Walking 1.1 miles to Shul Shabbos morning and 4 legs, Friday night, up and back Shabbos, back again for Mincha, right? It would be a lot less exertive if I would drive. But I can't drive. Driving is creative activity that is shaping the world to my needs. Walking is not. And therefore, non-exertive light switch problem on Shabbos. Walking a mile to shul or more is not a problem, is what must be done on Shabbos as opposed to driving. So Shabbos is our testimony that God created the world. Now it's interesting, above the ark over there, we have the 10 commandments, okay? And it's 5 and 5. The first 5 are dealing between human beings and our creator or creators, right? God and parents, creators. Second 5 is us and how we react, how we deal with other people, humankind to humankind. So besides that stack of top to bottom, right, person to creators, person to person, we also have a symmetry going across, okay? And that's why, for example, we're not going to go through all 5. All 10. That's a whole class in and of itself. But just briefly, if number 2 is don't have other gods, then across from number 2 is number 7, and that is do not commit adultery, right? What is one word that will describe both of those? What one word describes both of those? Not worshiping idols, being faithful in relationships, not committing adultery, loyalty. So we have to be loyal in our God relation, creator relation. We need to be loyal in our person-to-person relation. If you go now to number 4 and number 9, Number 4 is Shabbat. Number 9 is don't bear false testimony. Right? So that is not to speak, not to portray falseness about someone else. Right? Testimony is portraying something false person to person. Shabbat, or non-keeping of Shabbat, would be broadcasting incorrect information about God, that he's not a creator, right? That is, so Shabbat is the way that we do our belief in God as a creator, and we abstain from these creative, world-fashioning, altering activities. And which are those? Those are the ones that were used in the creating, in the building of the Mishkan. The Mishkan was that tabernacle. And the parallel there is creation was God making space for us in his world. Mishkan is our making place for God in our world. Okay, we hear that? And therefore the 39 Malachot are going to go through, those activities which were part of the building of the Mishkan. Okay? So let's look at 145. The second, right? The first paragraph, that's the Hebrew, right? V'shamru, right? Keep the Shabbat day holy, as the Almighty God commanded you. 6 days labor, do all your work. On the 7th day, a day of rest for the Almighty your God, should not do any work. The command to build a tabernacle in the Sinai desert was said together with the warning not to violate Shabbat. Again, in that's Shemot, Exodus 31. Again, in Exodus, Shemot 35, the warning not to transgress Shabbat also appears together with the building of the tabernacle. We learn from this 2 laws. Prohibited to build a tabernacle on Shabbat. Conversely, any work done in connection with the tabernacle may not be done on Shabbos. 39 kinds of malachos, labors, were performed for the construction of the tabernacle. These are the avot malacha. And av is Abba, av is father. The prototypes, how do they define? There is the primary, the prototype, okay? Other types of work which are derived from these prototypes are called the toldos. They are that which is born from it. But they also are of Torah level. For example, planting is one of the Av Malachot. We'll come to that soon. That's one of the first ones. Now, included in planting is watering. Why is that? Well, planting is effecting the growth of something in the earth. Watering is a told of that. That too affects. So on Sukkot, right, if you're eating outside, you want to wash your hands, you don't want to wash your hands over the grass or over any bushes, right? You can do it over some rocks, things like that, because you don't want to be planting, so to speak, on Shabbat. The laws of Shabbat are particularly numerous. To become proficient, one must study them deeply and at length. The Talmud relates that Rabbi Yochanan studied, for 3.5 years. Okay, so we'll try to do it in like 3.25 years, guys. Okay, I'm going to try to rush it on. Okay. This book provides an explanation of each of the 39 malachot, together with examples of related toledot. Okay, and we're going to go through also the common applications of these. Okay, in other words, we have certain a number of av malachot which have to do with the weaving process, because there were curtains that were woven for the Mishkan. We don't do much weaving, right? So these different steps are not going to have all that much practical application to us, right? So really there are a handful of these 39 that are very, very applicable to us. Certainly the food preparations coming to cooking, that's going to be the major one. But there will be many others also that will work their way in. Tearing, right? So that will come if, tearing one's floss, prepare it before Shabbos, right? Tearing toilet paper, should have tissues in the bathroom, right? Cut, right? So there are many that work their way in, and let us begin. Page 149, plowing. I always spelled it Plow. Hey, this is a British way of spelling it? I don't know. Ploughing. I don't know. Okay.
It's my first time seeing it.
Okay. Anyhow, right? The malacha of plowing, right, involves preparing the soil for sowing or planting and removing anything which might interfere with plant growth. Forbidden activities include digging or making furrows in the ground, right? Not such an issue for us on Shabbos. However, dragging a heavy object on the ground, that will be creating this furrow in the ground. Even though you're not planning to plant in there, right? That would be an issue. Okay, clearing stones, weeds, stubble from a field, fertilizing, draining the soil, leveling the ground, filling in holes, leveling mounds, spreading dirt on the ground, sweeping a garden, or playing games like marbles on the ground, which might lead one to level the ground for the game. That would all be issues. Okay? Now, again, not the sort of things that we normally do on Shabbos. Though there's an interesting halacha, which at first glance, everyone's going to say, really? Which says you can't sweep. You can't sweep a house on Shabbos. Why can't you sweep the house on Shabbos? Well, that halacha is actually when we're talking about when you have an earthen floor. So when you sweep the house, what do you end up doing? You end up filling in little holes, this and that, right? But on our, as long as we're not out camping or out in the wilderness, right, sweeping will not be a problem on Shabbos, okay? So plowing, besides, like we said, dragging something heavy, now pushing a stroller even through the grass, that's not going to create any ditch, any furrow, so that's not going to be an issue. Dragging a heavy bench, right, across a sand lot, right, that would become an issue, but again, not something that happens too often. Okay,
How about going to the beach?
just 1 second.
Is that gonna be a problem if you walk there?
Just 1 second.
No, I mean,
Oh, bigger somewhere.
yeah. If you go to the beach.
Okay, so one could walk to the beach. The problems you run into, right, is you can't carry anything. You're outside of an Eruv, right? So carrying anything will be a bit of a problem, right? So if you want to go for a nice walk along the beach, that one can do.
But
You want to lie down in the sand, that could be problematic. Just because you don't have to lie down on. Shelby? That would be okay, right? Just you don't want to be digging or filling in, or you don't want to be dragging anything heavy across that sandy playground. Correct. Normal walking is not going to be an issue.
as long as you don't lie down on there.
I'm sorry?
As long as you don't.
Even lying down in there, you're not creating a furrow. You're not creating a trench,
But
right?
how about playing in the water?
So bathing on Shabbos is something that we would that will come to that we don't ideally we're not bathing on Shabbos.
Okay.
So a walk on the beach, but going into the water, right? That's going to be more of an issue. Let's say swimming on Shabbos is something that it's not so clear what the prohibition is, but ideally one does not go swimming on Shabbos. That's the accepted practice. If someone is swimming on Shabbos, they're not being mechalel Shabbos. They're not desecrating Shabbos, but that's something that would ideally not be doing. Okay. Planting. Malacha of sowing involves sowing. What's the difference between sowing and planting? Anybody? Any farm people out here?
For some reason, I thought you were sewing clothes or something.
No, that's SEW.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, can I eat it? Okay, I see.
I think wouldn't it be like tending to, caring for?
It's probably in regards with the seeds.
What is the difference between sowing and planting?
Oh, yeah.
Cutting the trees. That one is kind of digging.
I feel quite the garden.
Nowadays.
Oh, yeah, maybe sowing is with, with seeds as opposed to a plant that's already planted and.
Oh, that might be the case.
People pay money to do all this stuff now, right?
Sowing refers to the act of scattering or placing seeds in the soil to grow into plants. Dispersing seeds, planting, the act of placing a seedling, sapling, or mature plant into the soil. Good. Right? Transplanting nursery grown plants. Okay. So the difference is the stage of growth. Right? Sowing is seeds that will germinate and grow. Planting can involve seeds, but often refers to placing already germinated or grown plants. Okay, fair enough. Good to know. Okay. So when you pluff, you want to be careful if you're going to sow or you're going to plant. Okay. Forbidden activities include throwing seeds on arable soil, planting, bending branches to plant them, grafting, pruning or cutting off branches, watering plants. Right? That's a very, very relevant one, right? Watering plants, putting flowers in water, changing their water, adding water to them, okay? Removing weeds, thinning out plants, tarring trees, fertilizing. Okay, that's stuff we don't do. But these things we would do, that does come up on Shabbos, right? If the plant, I have some flower pots in the house and they're very dry, they need some watering. Can't do that on Shabbos, right? I want to put the flowers, someone brought flowers before Shabbos, but didn't have a chance to put them into water before Shabbos. You can't put them into water on Shabbos, right? I have some flowers and the water's getting a little bit discolored. Can't change their water. Can't add water to them, okay? So those are, those are very, very practical week-to-week applications that we have when it comes to planting. And I also mentioned before, right, if you are washing your hands outside, not to do it onto grass, onto plants. Right? You could do it onto sidewalk, and if it then flows to where it flows, that will not be an issue. Okay, we're flying over here, guys. Right. Number 3 is reaping. Reaping, uprooting a plant from its place of growth. Right? Forbidden activities include harvesting grain, picking fruits or flowers, okay? Mowing the lawn, breaking branches or sawing them off trees, moving flower pots that are on the ground, okay? Flower pots that are on the ground are considered like attached to the ground, and therefore moving them is like harvesting it. Right. So if I've got some grapes in my fridge, can I pull them off the little cluster?
Yes, because it's already.
Yeah, of course. Right. That's not attached to the ground. Right. The problem is when it's attached to the ground.
Who come up with these rules, Rabbi?
So the Torah prohibits by placing together Shabbos and Mishkan. So the Torah Shebaal Peh, meaning along, and this is very important. This is very, 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 very important. We have our Torah Shebichtav, we have our written Torah, we have our Torah Shebaal Peh. We have the oral Torah that has since been transcribed in the Talmud, in the Mishnah and the Talmud. The oral Torah is the explanations of the Torah given to Moses on Mount Sinai and passed down through the generations. So, for example, God said, as we say in the Shema, you should bind an oat, which means a sign on your hands, and totafot between your eyes. What in the world is an oat? What in the world is totafot? That's the question Moshe asked God. And God explained exactly what tefillin are. And that's recorded in the Talmud. And that's why anyone who's wearing tefillin wears the black box on the hand, black box on the head. But actually, it's one box on the hand. It's 4 boxes compressed on the head, and exactly what's written inside of them. That is all Torah Shebaal Peh. That is all the explanations given to Moshe of what the Torah is referring to. Similarly, it says, don't do malacha on Shabbos. Moshe asked God, what does that mean not to do malacha on Shabbos? And God explained, well, I'm putting the Torah, right? The Torah that I'm commanding you to write and I'm dictating to you puts Shabbat and Mishkan tabernacle next to one another, because you look at the malacha that was done for the building of the Mishkan, that is what you can't do on Shabbat. So these 39 are all those acts that were done for the building of the Mishkan, right? And therefore, Hashem told Moshe, that is what one cannot do on Shabbat. Now, once we have these 39, so we see, how does it apply to us in our world? If I'm a farmer, it applies to me in a very, very distinct, clear manner. I can't plow my fields. I can't plant my fields. I can't harvest my fields. Us living in cities, not on farms. So for us, we don't have those bona fide restrictions are not really in our wheelhouse, but there are actions that are in our world that fall under these categories, and that's what we're looking to find. But these 39 come from God to Moses to us as part of the oral Torah. Okay, but that's a very important thing to understand. Okay, so you can't pick a fruit, right? You've got a beautiful clementine tree in your backyard, right? Well, that would be bona fide reaping, right? Pulling it off from the tree on Shabbos, absolutely prohibited. Okay? Now, those are the forbidden activities. We said harvesting, picking fruits or flowers, right? You want to pick some beautiful flowers for yourself or someone else? Not on Shabbos. Okay? Mowing the lawn, okay, that we understand. Breaking branches, sewing them off, moving flower pots, okay. The malacha includes removing honey from a beehive. Interesting. Even though it doesn't actually grow in there and it's not attached to the ground, but I believe rabbinically, or maybe not even rabbinically, that might be considered that falls into this category. Third paragraph, our sages also prohibited actions which may cause one to tear off branches. Okay? Now, that is not Torah level. And as we said before, Torah level does not just include that which is explicit in the Torah. Torah level also includes the Torah Shebaal Peh, the oral Torah explanations of that which is written in the Torah. But there also are rabbinic restrictions that is making a fence around the Torah. Well, I like to explain it. If Southern California Edison comes to fix some electric lines, they have to tear up the street in order to access these lines, and they're not going to finish it in one day. If they're not going to put some protective barriers and tape around that area, that'll be criminal, because a person could fall in and really, really get hurt. Cars could fall in, people could fall in. If something is of great importance, you have to protect it. So the sages did not want anybody to fall in and make a mistake when it comes to these Torah level. So in addition to the Torah level, they have certain restrictions. And when the first Mishnah in Ethics of the Fathers is Asu Sayag LeTorah. You need to make a fence around the Torah.
Therefore, they said, don't climb a tree or utilize a tree in any way. Why? Because if you're climbing up a tree, what's a good chance what might happen? You're going to break off a branch, right? Or riding an animal or making use of an animal, right? Or traveling in a wagon drawn by an animal. Why? Because there one might come to tear off a branch in order to have something to help prod the animal. These are not Torah restrictions. These are full-blooded rabbinic restrictions that we treat them as seriously as a Torah restriction. Okay, sheaf making. Right? Page 152. The malacha of sheaf making involves gathering scattered objects or combining them into one bunch. Right? Forbidden activities include gathering fruit which fell from a tree, gathering twigs or straw, making a wreath of flowers, threading fruits on a string, or pressing them into one bunch like a fig roll. Okay? So even if these fruits all fell before Shabbat, right? Let's say it fell on Shabbat. Would that be a problem or not a problem?
I think it's not a problem unless you don't touch it and gather them.
Okay, but there is, right, there's not the problem of your harvesting, but there is another issue called muktzah. Muktzah is something, was a big category we'll come to later on. Muktzah is something that was unusable or not destined for use when Shabbos began. Then we don't move that on Shabbos. So if something that fell off the tree on Shabbos, being that when Shabbos came, it was inaccessible for your usage. Why was it inaccessible for your usage? Because you can't pull it off. Therefore, at that point, it was beyond the realm of your usage. Therefore, that'll be muktzah. That we'll see. That's another rabbinic category that we'll see later on. Okay, sheaf making. So if you have a bunch of fruit that had all fallen off from the tree before Shabbos, you would not want to gather them together, right? If someone spilled things on Shabbos, you had a whole bowl of grapes, and oops, right? So there, you don't need to leave the grapes on the floor the whole Shabbos. Make it into a Lucy Arnaz, grape juice as you're walking around, right? Right. So then one would be able to gather it, right? It's not to gather; it's to get it out of the way. Okay, let's do one more, and then we'll call it. Page 153, threshing. The malach of threshing involves removing something edible from its natural casing, removing kernels from their stalks, or removing a liquid absorbed in a solid. Okay, so you see down over there, right? Okay, forbidden activities include removing peas or other legumes from their pods if the pods are inedible, squeezing juice from fruits or vegetables, milking cows. Okay, so that is something that's very, very relevant to us. Okay, squeezing fruits, we can't do that on Shabbos, right? You want to squeeze, we can't squeeze out fruits. That's called schita, that we're not allowed to do on Shabbos. Now, why would removing peas from their pods be different than peeling an orange and eating an orange? Can you peel an egg on Shabbos and eat the egg? Yes, you can. Can you peel an orange and eat an orange on Shabbos? Yes, you can. Right?
Because they grow in there?
Yeah, but so do the peas.
Yeah.
So do the peas.
Is the outside of the pea not really edible? Or it could be used?
Yeah, so it's not edible, as is that eggshell, right? Not edible, right? But over here, right, the truth is if you would be opening up the thing in order to eat the peas, that would be okay, because that's all part of your eating process. But doing it in order to prepare a whole bowl of it, right, that would be more of an issue. That would be this dash in Hebrew, this threshing activity.
But you can cut the fruits on the Shabbos, right?
You can cut fruits, not a problem. You can
Okay.
peel fruits, you can cut fruits in order to eat them on Shabbos. Yes,
So
Lord.
you mentioned an egg, you can, like a boiled egg, you can.
Correct.
What, you couldn't, you cannot.
You can.
You
You
can.
can.
What's the difference that you can with an egg and not with the peas?
So the eggs would be that.
The shell's not edible.
Correct.
Mhm.
Correct. So that would be part. Oh, one second. Wrong place. Yeah. So if I'm doing it as part of my regular eating, right, I want to eat an egg, I'm going to peel the egg and eat the egg. That's fine. I want to get these peas out from their pods and eating that in a normal fashion. That's fine. What's happening over here in the picture is I'm doing that, preparing a whole bowl, but not as part of my eating process. There's something called the derech achila, right? That's how you're eating. That's a normal way of eating, right? A normal way of eating eggs is you have to peel the eggs, and a normal way of eating peas, if it's in an inedible husk, right? So then you would need to open it up like peeling an orange. But here we're talking about preparing it for later on. That's considered more of an industrial process, which we'll see when it comes to other things. That's where the issues come up.
So is it that they're not eating it right then and there?
Correct.
Doing it?
Correct. It's not part of their regular eating process. Okay, my friends, let's call it over here, and we will pick up in 2 weeks' time. Let me wish everybody a good rest of the week, a good Shabbos, and a meaningful fast on Sunday. Okay? Yes.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Yeah.
A question, not a question, is more, I meant to ask you beforehand. This is really okay. I apologize if it's not.
Don't worry.
But so next Tuesday, we're not having class, but next Tuesday, if anybody's familiar with Rabbi Taffy Singer, he'll be in San Diego, speaking that night, or one night that we're off, so I'm going. I think Orly's gonna try to make it too.
Okay.
Yeah, I think
Okay.
it's free.
All right, Tovia Singer is a very, very special person, and he does incredible work against missionaries, showing how Christian missionaries will distort the scripture, the Navi, the prophets, to make it seem like Jesus is everywhere, right? And that, yeah. So he does great work teaching and clarifying. Right? We had him here in the shul. He spoke here a number of years ago. Right? He does amazing, amazing work. Yeah. Yeah. His goal is not to get Christians to leave their faith, but to make sure that Jews don't leave their faith for Christianity. Yeah. But there are many, 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 many Christians who see his stuff on YouTube and then start to question and then join Jewish journeys. Embark on Jewish journeys. Yeah. Okay, guys.
Thanks.
Vacation.